With the Butt Kicker Gamer 2, what you see and what you hear is what you feel. Butt Kicker. The future is feeling.
From a dry Florida evening to a wet Italian morning in the LMP3 GT4 Challenge, conditions couldn't really be more different if they tried to from 7 days ago, with certainly one of the most picturesque circuits in the world currently shrouded in cloud. Delighted to have your company here on RaceSpotTV, and coming from Mugello up in the commentary booth, it's myself, Gareth Thacker, and Ron Morns alongside. We've got Ramiro Augustin Chinieros up in the broadcast booth as well, making some beautiful pictures and trying to keep up with all of the action that we're likely to see this evening. Going to be a fun one, going to be tense. I think going to be tricky for some of these drivers as well, as we'll have an hour's worth of racing in round 3 of the season. Ron, this is quite the shift from 7 days ago, isn't it?
Oh, it absolutely is, turning our way 180 degrees from how it was at the Daytona road course 1 week ago. That race, bone dry, running under the lights here at Mugello, daytime, dealing with the weather. You could really get 2 different types of race conditions if you tried, and you couldn't get 2 different racetracks if you tried as well either. Mugello, a pretty far departure, both geographically and otherwise, to Daytona 1 week ago. So this is going to be about as big of a contrast that we'll have all season long.
Yeah, looking forward to other tracks in the calendar, like Phillip Island, Long Beach, the Nürburgring coming up as well. Going to be a fantastic little calendar as we work our way towards the end of the season. But we've got a couple of point standings as we go into round number 3. And for the time being, Adam Brockway is the driver who leads the LMP3 standings. Mobin Khan, fresh after a fantastic result 7 days ago, is up into P2 in the championship. Then a tight battle for P3. Eric Leroy and Carter James, 1 point between them. We'll see who can gain an edge tonight. Edwin Offra and Victor Couto in 5th and 6th, with David Stevenson and Jacob Van Spanje just over the 80-point threshold. Kwok Yin and Chad Nobles tied on 79 points. They round out the top 10. In teams, Murat Nazem squad are pretty much dominating the top 2. Oceana Coffee and Ginger Liveries found themselves 1st and 2nd, with Ignite trying to chase them down from P3. Echelon Simsport and Satellite Racing make up P4 and P5, those 2 teams over 100 points, with Impact Simsport, Hydro Race, Geodesic Racing, Sartex CM and Solpec Precision Racing rounding out our team order. In the GT4 driver standings, Aidan Young, a familiar face at the top of the tree. He finds himself 4 points clear of Aaron Myers. Don't expect that gap to grow out too much across the season. Arnaud Jeunesse, fantastic results so far this year, gets him up into the top 3 in the standings. He's just ahead of Chris Schmrecker, who is in P4. Ayrton Williams and Ken Copeland find themselves 5th and 6th, with Roman Foe, Justin Bracken and Gabriel Gutierrez, one after the other, 7th, 8th and 9th, 1 point between each of them. Just ahead of Kurt Ham in 10th position with 75 points. In the team standings, it's Unit X Valhalla who lead the way by 13 points to Satellite Racing. The Wrong Stuff are just in behind them, with Passion Sim Esports in P4. Middle of the pack racing are middle of that top 10 in P5, with WSR Esports Butt Kicker inside the top 6, chasing the Delta in 7th, just over that 100-point threshold, with Sardex MC, Hungry Hamsters and Echelon Simsport rounding out our top 10 GT4 teams. But as always, before we get into too much of the racing action here from Mugello, we have to thank the sponsors who make the broadcast possible here on RaceSpotTV 5 days a week from the PRL, starting with Logitech. Logitech G wheels and pedals are equipped with true force feedback to help you feel the road and own the race. Use code PRECISION5 at checkout on logitechg.com for 5% off of your purchase. Advanced Sim Racing, owned and operated by passionate sim racers, Advanced Sim Racing designs and builds the sturdiest and most durable aluminium profile racing simulation cockpits available in the market today. All PRL members also get a 5% discount on ASR products using the Precision5 coupon code. Racebox offers mid and high-end button boxes for sim racing enthusiasts, from the casual gamer up to the most meticulous sim racing driver. Competitively priced and carefully handcrafted, our button boxes are an enjoyable addition to any sim racing setup. Visit raceboxsimracing.com and get a 5% discount using the Precision5 coupon code. Butt Kicker products add incredible immersion and realism to every single game. Feel every nuance and truly put yourself into the driver's seat with Butt Kicker. Moradness is a performance lifestyle brand motivated by motorsport and founded by professional race car driver Daniel Morad. Mr. Hedge Sim Racing Photography. Capture your finest, proudest, or simply worst moments from your hobby in up to 8K resolution. It is, of course, a great addition to any sim room. And Advanced Motorsports. Get ready to learn to be fast with Advanced Motorsports. Get ready, follow them on all of their socials to become a better driver. And we thank all of our sponsors, as always, who support us all the time here in the PRL and make these broadcasts possible on RaceSpotTV. As I said, 5 nights a week, starting last night with the iRacing series, which of course has come back for 2025. We're delighted about that. And of course, Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays as well. Into qualifying, though, early in the morning here in Mugello, just shy of 9 a.m. on what is April Fool's Day. Weather is definitely not fooling us in being pretty damp on the circuit. But Ron, times have to be on the board pretty quickly in conditions like this. You can't really afford to be hoping for a last lap surprise.
Yeah, that is a really good point to raise, because not only are these drivers not interested at all in hedging their bets in one single lap, because in conditions like this, you could lose it oh so easily. Doubly so considering the rain is still coming down. It's not like we had a big blotch of rain earlier on and the track is now starting to dry. No, the rain is still coming down around here. Take a look at the iRacing weather forecast. We are going to have rain to talk about all throughout this session. iRacing currently marking the track as very wet indeed. And as we can see with the onboards of the drivers that we're riding on board with and following in this qualifying session right now, with only a couple of minutes left to go in this solo session, they're dealing with the puddles and dealing with a whole lot of stuff that they probably didn't have in mind. But, you know, it's the way the fates went, so they're going to have to kind of switch their brains a little bit to go into a different mindset as to how to tackle this race effectively.
Yeah, for the time being, it's Adam Brockway who leads the way by just 12 thousandths of a second ahead of Victor Couto. Maxime Grenon a little bit further back, but still within the second. This is the kind of race where we would expect to see times in qualifying extended just that little bit more. Aiden Young has got a second and a half to Cade Smith on the provisional front row in the GT4 class, as Adam Brockway increases his advantage from 12 thousandths to 1,826 thousandths. 1.8 seconds it is now between those two, as Zach Ebert pops it inside the top two in the 5-1-1. Mobin Khan hoping for a little bit more of his qualifying magic, currently down in P7, but a little bit of time to try and improve on that lap time. Let's see where he can go.
And let's see what Khan can do in that number 64 car, heading his way through the final corner around this track. A whole lot of corners to talk about, but this is the very last one around Mugello. That's turn number 15, whose Italian name pronunciation I will dare attempt at the risk of embarrassing myself. But you can see coming across the line with the driver of the number 64 car. Is it a jump up the running order, or will he remain down there? No, jumping up to the front row. Not enough to usurp Brockway, but still a very good time from Khan.
Yeah, Mobin Khan, again, consistent in qualifying. Let's see if he can get himself towards the front. We'll probably have the one more lap time to try and set. JP Alfonso, let's see what he can do in the 996. We've seen a couple of decent qualifying laps from him this season. Let's see if he can replicate something of that form in that 996. Just the final corner to go here, and what a final corner it is, all the way through turn 15. It's such a stellar way to end the lap, and so difficult for the drivers in these wet conditions to know exactly when to pin that throttle.
Yeah, I feel like even in the dry, that corner is hard to psych at. It feels like it just does not end. You think, okay, yeah, it's a hairpin 180 degrees. No, it doesn't feel like 180 degrees. Really, it feels kind of reminiscent of the first corner around Shanghai, the old Chinese F1 track. I say the old, it's still hosting the Chinese Grand Prix after a couple of year hiatus, but it kind of has that same feeling for the simple sake that it feels like a corner that simply does not stop. You're turning, still turning, still turning, still turning, the track falling away from you, you're still turning and trying to get a crack of that throttle pedal open to carry a bit more speed through that corner. In conditions like this where it's raining cats and dogs, it's difficult to manage, but look at that jumping up to the pole in the P3s.
Yeah, looking pretty good for Maxime Grenon. 2 minutes 7.144 right towards the end of the session. Really impressive stuff to see him find himself to the top of the tree. Let's see if the 27 can hold on to that, of course, comes into this race. Not really in any kind of LMP3 championship battle. He's not started either in the opening 2 races. So he's looking to put the cat amongst the pigeons tonight. Eric Leroy's in the top 3. He's in the top 2 in qualifying for the time being. It's Aiden Young currently 1.9 seconds in front of the rest of the field. Can he improve on that? You bet he can. That gap to anybody else, 2.2 seconds. And Aiden Young is showing why he has been the dominant force in the GT4 class, going for his 4th championship in a row. And with pace like this, it's going to be hard to try and catch him.
I gotta say as well, that's a really good spot to find yourself in if you are Aiden Young. He won last time at Daytona, so looking to try and go back-to-back with the victories thus far this season. And I will say, in terms of the races thus far this season, all the pole sitters in the GT4 classes have converted that to wins, so that would be a very good starting spot for Aiden Young as that qualifying session has officially been drawn to a close.
Yeah, and a really quite frantic qualifying session. Not everybody getting their lap times in, but this is what it's given us in terms of a grid in the LMP3s. Maxime Grenon will lead us to green ahead of Mobin Khan. Mobin Khan, great qualifying performances kept up by him as he is ahead of Eric Leroy. Championship leader Adam Brockway will start in P4, but still within a second of the pole time. Here, the only 4 drivers within a second of the pole time. Zach Hebert and Victor Couto find themselves well outside that second on row 3. Jerome Bertiome and JP Alfonso make up row number 4 with Jacob Van Spanje and David Stevenson in 9th and 10th on row number 5. Barely 400 to split those two, mind you. Carter James and Dakiel Rodriguez are on row 6 again. Not much to split those two, albeit nearly 6 seconds down. Chris Massey is going to start P13, nearly 8 seconds down in his 89 machine. Aiden Young will be ahead of Cade Smith, a full second between the two on the front row, as we'll see if Aiden Young can try and convert this qualifying pace into a great race. Justin Raymond, Aaron Myers, championship contenders, find themselves on the row number 2 with Ken Copeland and Eric Fenson on row number 3. We roll on to see drivers on row 4, nearly 3 seconds and more than 3 seconds off the pole. Etten Williams and Roman Foe. Kurt Ham and Garrett Maines rounding out our top 10 with Justin Bracken and Keith Powell on the outside looking in for the time being. But from row 6, we'll see what they can do. Christian Menezes and Arnaud Jeunesse will start on row 7 with Matthew Wykov and Jerry Manella 15th and 16th. Gabriel Gutierrez and Andrew Slovak inside the top 18. Let's see if they can keep themselves inside the top 20. They'll have to defend from the likes of Joseph Maley and Joe Faroni, though, as they round out the top 20. Stephen Tang and Jeff Rosenberger on row 11. Robert Schwenkler and Kalen Tobin on row number 12. And just Parker Muirhead, P25, rearing up the field. But let's see what he can do from there. I'm sure he'll gain a few positions by just staying alive on the opening lap if he's able to do so. But a full enough grid here at Mugello. Ron, I don't think we're going to be bored and short of action. At a circuit like this, with conditions like this, it's going to be more of a challenge for everybody just to keep it on the road, I think.
I feel like it's also going to be a challenge for us on the broadcast, just keeping a track of all of the action. Never mind picking the cars through the smoke and all the spray. It's also going to be tough just managing this race for these drivers because you got so many twists and turns around this track, so many bits of standing water. The rain is still coming down, so this track, I can't even call it a racetrack at this point. It's slowly turning into a lake. So running around Lake Mugello, these racers have a lot of stuff that's going to be riding on their minds come time for this 1-hour race that we have starting up in the not too distant future. So for these drivers, it's not going to be an easy day in the office at all. Compared to the first 2 races of the season that we've had at Watkins Glen and Daytona, this may be the toughest ask of this entire season. Mugello, about a year old in terms of its time on the iRacing platform, was introduced for season 1 of 2024. It's one of the tracks that has a rare distinction from my perspective of being one that I bought pretty much as soon as it was brought onto the service. It's a wonderful track hosted Formula One back in the COVID-affected season of 2020. Got a lot of twists and turns, a lot of challenge baked into it as well. It's difficult enough in the dry, let alone in the wet. So as I said earlier on, and I will still stand by this point, Dara, this may be the single toughest race that these drivers have to deal with all season long.
And that says something, considering we're going to the likes of Phillip Island Motorsport, the Nürburgring as well. But absolutely, I have to agree with you. It really is one of those tracks right at the top of my bucket list. Absolutely would love to go to Mugello for any race weekend. It is such a gorgeous venue. Of course, up in the Tuscan Hills here in Italy, very rich wine-growing region as well. You don't get many lakes around here by the nature of the valleys and the hills, and it really is an absolutely stunning part of the world, near the cities of Florence, not too far away from the city of Pisa, of course, the Leaning Tower, famous worldwide, but hopefully we're going to get some famous racing action that we're going to be talking about for quite some time here this evening, and we won't have too much longer to find out. This warm-up session going to be crucial for the drivers. Often warm-up isn't necessarily used heavily by the drivers, but in conditions like this, with maybe the unknowns that the drivers will have, this is a really, really important 5 minutes, I'd say.
Yeah, it is incredibly vital, just trying to get a grips with the track conditions, and also, as we're seeing following Eric Leroy in the 444 car in the LMP3 category, getting comfortable with going side by side with some traffic is a big factor as well. Certainly, if you are an LMP3 runner, you got to get comfortable. You got to be a little bit risky going for a move in this warm-up session around the outside into turn number 12. That would have been very bold from the 444, but not close enough to get that move done. But this warm-up session, incredibly vital, doubly so considering that rain is still coming down. iRacing now marking the track as extremely wet, and the track temperatures as well, not ideal. Track temperature currently be listed at 64 degrees Fahrenheit, so even talking about tire temperatures will be another tricky spot for these drivers. Lots of curveballs being thrown their way.
Yeah, and I didn't have to just double check what 64 Fahrenheit was in my language, but that is pretty chilly for track temperature, isn't it? I wouldn't mind if this room was 64 Fahrenheit. I don't even think it's quite up to there. It may even just be under that, but it is a chilly day here at Mugello. So much rain in the air, not too much wind though. A very gentle breeze, I think it's fair to say, at 8 miles an hour, but I think overcast is probably underselling it a bit. Very, very wet, but just about 9:30, we're about to get going on the formation lap here in the race. I think a lot of these drivers will be targeting this race, not necessarily one that will go to form with the conditions, with the nature of the circuit as well. And this could be a race in the championship where a lot of the drivers in the championship picture end up dropping because they may not be able to get the results that they are able to achieve at other circuits around. However, it's interesting to see that we do have championship protagonists right at the front of the field, notably with Aidan Young leading us to green in the GT4s, but going to have his work cut out to keep it on the track here.
Oh, he absolutely will. I can't even imagine what these drivers are thinking, seeing turn number 1 at the very start of this race. Picking your way through the spray, it is going to be menacing, doubly so considering we have a rolling start from this series. So just more stuff piled on. It is, I mean, for this race, I'm not even sure what a good mindset would be or what a good idea for practice would be for these drivers. Just, I don't know, driving around this track with a bag over your head. I feel like unless you're running at the front of your class or in clean air, that is the best way to try and describe the vision. I think come time for the start of this race, and actually even before, as we're in this formation lap, I want to see how bad the spray is obscuring some of the cars in the mid-pack of GT4 heading their way off into turn number 1 on this formation lap. But the spray going to be really tough, especially at the start of the race. The drop of the green going to be possibly the most important time for these drivers. Want to make hay while the sun is shining, but again, you can win the race at the end of the race. You can win the race at the very start. So these drivers also have to exercise an extra amount of caution than they probably have done in the races thus far.
not exactly where you are going to be wanting to make a bit of a late diving move in these conditions, especially to start a race as well, and we're going to have to wait and see how the drivers judge it. Welcome to everybody, of course, in the chat, watching along from home. Delighted that you're with us on a Monday night in the PRL. Very, very much differing conditions to what we've become accustomed to on RaceSpotTV. It felt like it's been Daytona, but now moving away from the International Speedway and into some more niche circuits, I think it's fair to say, but exciting circuits all the same. And delighted to be able to have all of you watching along, and great to see a few of you in the chat as well. Always great to have a good chat going on a Monday night. We always do. Looking forward to seeing how these GTPs get underway. Ron, it's that time. We're into the final sector. Who's going to be winning your race? Either class, either or?
Ooh, that is a really good question. I remember you throwing me that one right before the start of this season, doing my first ever PRL broadcast here on RaceSpot. But I think a couple rounds on the board now, I think I have a good idea as to who I will be keeping my eyes on. In the GT4s, I kind of called this shot earlier on, but Aiden Young going to be starting from the pole in that class all throughout this season, even though we only have 2 races on the board. The pole sitters in GT4 have won every single race. Garrett Maines on the pole in at Watkins Glen won that race. And Aiden Young, off the back of a victory at Daytona, started that race from the pole. So he's probably going to be my pick in GT4. In LMP3, though, it's a little bit more up in the air. You got some drivers who we haven't seen start at the north end of the field thus far this season, starting at the front. However, I think it would be a little bit dumb of me to bet against Adam Brockway. Already has a victory thus far this season. That coming at Watkins Glen. He's a championship leader, and he also grabbed another podium at Daytona 1 week ago. So Brockway not proving himself to be the most standout star in terms of pace, but I still think he may be one that we have to keep our eyes on. But my pick in LMP3 is actually going to be Mobin Khan. He's been making his way up, finished the first race this season in 3rd, finished the second one at Daytona in 2nd, so maybe making his way up to a win here at Mugello. Let's just wait and see. So for my picks, I'm going with Aiden Young in GT4 and Mobin Khan in LMP3, and now we can watch those predictions age like milk.
Yeah, well, we're going to see how they fare. I'm going to be boring and stick with the pole sitters. I think Maxime Grenon is going to get his first PRL LMP3 victory. He's going to lead us from the pole, though, as the pace car dives in as they exit the final corner. An hour's worth of wet weather racing here at Mugello, slipping and sliding all over the road. But it's Maxime Grenon who slides his way across the start-finish line first, and he gets us underway here at Mugello on a Monday night in the LMP3 GT4 Challenge from the PRL on RaceSpotTV. Through the mist, if you can see any of the drivers, you will see Grenon leading his way into turn 1. It's Mobin Khan who should defend into the opening corner, and the front 2 will stay as they are if Grenon keeps it on the circuit, which he does. Brockway trying for an up and under, and he may claim P2 in the GT4. It's a good enough start for Aiden Young to keep himself in the lead, but Justin Rame coming around the outside in that number 88 machine, trying to find his way around the outside of Cade Smith. Not going to work out there as the number 41 stays in P2, but crucially for Aiden Young, he survived turn 1. Now it's his chance to pull away from the rest.
I think some drivers in the GT4s didn't even make it off into turn number 1. I think I saw some drivers going sideways down the start-finish straightaway, let alone into the corner. Just some drivers running into some difficulties already in all of our classes. A lot of movers and shakers. Still leading it in the GT4s, Aiden Young, Maxime Grenon still leading in LMP3. But as the field is heading their way off through the mid-sector of this lap, this is going to be the real test. First lap under racing conditions. These tires are still going to be ice cold compared to how these racers would probably want them, and heading off through some of the fastest corners from this entire season is going to be a real tough ask.
Let's see how they are able to manage, though. The end of the opening lap is still yet to fall on us. This is going to be a less than 30 lap race. We're looking at 28, 29 laps, so pit windows aren't going to be terribly wide, but I think teams and drivers will be looking at only a couple of laps. Maxime Grenon, though, going wide off the circuit, taking the MotoGP long lap penalty, and he takes the penalty of dropping down from 1st to 4th, as that is not the start he would have been hoping for. Khan and Brockway now lead the way as we see Victor Couto ducking and diving behind Eric Leroy, a driver who started inside the top 3 but is now struggling to keep himself inside the top 5. Through the final corner they come. Couto to the outside, Leroy to the inside, but deep from the 444, and Couto will have the inside line. Can he make use of it even? Not quite, and he's going to have to use the run towards turn 1 to try and see himself into the top 5 this time.
And let's see if we're going to see a side-by-side fight between these two. Look at that, nearly running off into the grass. I think he did do a little bit of lawn mowing there. That is absolutely terrifying. Just from our perspective in the commentary booth, I can't even imagine how clenched he was in that number 72 car. But Koido running wide through turn number 1, off into the paint, which is going to be oh so treacherous for these drivers all throughout the race. That's going to allow Alfonso to get up into 6th, as you see Keith Powell in the Porsche number 322 car hit the barrier and pop off that rear wing.
Yeah, not looking too good in the early stages. I don't think he'll be the last driver to go too far off the road. Aaron Myers is trying to get Eric Fenson to go too far off the road, and Aaron Myers improves up into the top 4. Of course, can't really afford to lose too many points. Aiden Young early on into the season, his qualifying performances haven't quite been what they were towards the back end of 2024, but he's still showing why he's a contender in the championship with some absolutely great racecraft. And he's up into the top 4, a couple of seconds up to Justin Rain, but we'll see if he can catch Carter James and Jerome Bertillon now fighting through the Arabiatas 1 and 2, but it will be Carter James who steals a bit of a march and gets himself up into the top 7.
Some drivers making up some moves thus far, and this is a good time to do it as the field is still packed in together. Once those mistakes start to develop, though, that's going to be where this race really settles into a groove. Looking at that off-track excursion for Carter James, that was heading off through the very fast section of turn number 6 and 7. That series of corners is possibly one of the quickest all throughout this season. These drivers certainly not proving it, though, with the really wet conditions that we still find this track enveloped in. Parter Murhead having a moment in the number 19 Aston Martin. That was coming out of turn number 1. No harm, no foul. Outside, a little bit of lost time and maybe some lost positions as well. And there's another replay of Keith Powell having that wild off-track excursion, which I believe was heading down into turn number 11 and 10. Lots of chicanes around this racetrack. A little bit hard to keep track of them, but these drivers certainly keeping track of how their races are doing as they still go side by side despite these conditions being as treacherous as they are.
Yeah, 180 degrees. Oh, as drivers off in the background. Who was that? Oh no, oh, was it Aaron Myers? It could have been Aaron Myers. In fact, it was Aaron Myers going off the road towards the final chicane of that lap, and the 22 slides off the road, and there's going to be critical damage to that car. Really, really disappointing for Aaron Myers. He will be absolutely gutted, I'm sure. Let's see if he can even survive the end of this lap and get it down pit road. Let's see what happened to the 22. Does he drop it on his own? Is he given assistance? Over the wet patch as he makes his way through turn 13 at Biandetti 1. It's just going to slide the car out. The rear end leaves him, and he finds himself into that barrier. And the 22 championship contender last season, season before, and the season before that even, looking like he's going to fall quite a ways behind Ed Young in the championship after only round 3.
After getting a second place finish at the season opening race in Daytona, he's not going to make a 2 P2s in 3 races for the number 22 car. So that's a big incident. That's going to take him out of contention big time. But looking at a big time battle, we got the north end of the field. Mobin Khan still leading it over Adam Brockway Khan, trying to fight as hard as he can. Still looking for his first checkered flag of the season. And he's shown a lot of pace to try and get it done. That was a GT4 car that stopped. You can see that McLaren. Be careful on the rejoin there. That was nearly a crash a little bit farther in the back of shot with that GT4 rejoin. But getting back to the point that I was going to mention in reference to Mobin Khan, he has shown some race-winning speed all throughout this season. He just hasn't been in the catbird seat and hasn't gotten the good luck to find himself spraying champagne at the end of these 1-hour races. But as I said, he's been building to it. Finished 3rd at the first race, finished 2nd in the second one, and let's see if he'll finish 1st in the 3rd one. And there's the off-track moment from the 999 car of Joseph Malley, and this was the McLaren GT4 car that nearly decided the fate of the top runners in LMP3.
Yeah, Joseph Malley just about keeping the rejoin okay. You can see a couple of the LMP3s having to duck and dive away, but they had more than enough time to react to the 999 going around, and I think he'll get away with that one, it's fair to say. Mobin Khan may not get away with a wide moment at turn 1, though. Adam Brockway wouldn't mind slipping up the inside of 2, but won't be able to find the correct line through there. And the 2 title protagonists in the early stages of the season are locked in battle early on in this race. Only 7 minutes gone, only 3 laps gone in this race, but already they're going at it. 4 and 5 is upcoming on the live picture. There's contact. Mobin Khan's off the road. There was contact with Adam Brockway, and the race leader is out of the, well, out of the top 5 now will be, after spinning around at turn 4 and 5, came over the front a little bit of Adam Brockway. But Khan, the 64 off the road and having to recover from P7 now.
Close quarters racing ending in tears at the front of this field. Khan and Brockway, the two drivers who have been some of the quickest thus far this season. They've been clean. They were clean up until that moment. May have to take a look at a replay of that. Looked like two cars fighting for the same piece of real estate out there on the circuit, but either way, that's going to result in a big time loss for Mobin Khan. Brockway now leading this race quite comfortably, as we're going to take a look to see what happened to Khan and Brockway in the number 64 car. You can see Brockway trying to get the move done, wheeling it on the inside, heading off out of turn number 1. They were clean heading through the first chicane. That's turn number 2 and 3. However, Khan leading at Brockway right behind, setting himself up for a monstrous exit coming out of turn number 3. And this was a shot he wanted. Tried to pull the dummy, went for the inside, then going for the outside, and then I'm not even sure what to make of that, Dara. It just looked like two cars fighting for the same piece of asphalt.
Yeah, the lines almost converging down into turn 4 and 5. Khan will have said that Brockway should have reacted. Brockway will say that he was holding his line into the corner. I'm sure that will be discussed post-race, but as it is, Brockway now has the race lead. Mobin Khan is to recover from P6. This is the view on board from Brockway. In the 42, you can see Khan comes across the front a little bit. Brockway hasn't turned in yet. I think you can, pick the bones out of that yourself. Difficult to really judge exactly who is to blame, if anybody, in that situation. But they will continue on, and Brockway will continue to lead this race. Grenon, of course, started the race on pole, dropped down to P4, is now back up to P2, having a bit of a yo-yo race so far.
Yeah, having a bit of a yo-yo race thus far, and hoping not to feel like a yo-yo at the end of all of this. A lot of different manufacturer representation up at the front of GT4, it must be said. I was actually going to raise this when we were in the warm-up session earlier on there. There was some discussion between some of the drivers talking about the Mercedes in this session. The Mercedes GT4, and really by a large extent the GT3 car as well, not really known as the most agile, nimble cars in the world. The front end of it you could probably land a plane on, but it looks like the Mercedes are actually showing some decent paces. You can see a wild off-track excursion from Carter James in the number 99 car, going to rejoin, but a big moment. And we're going to see Keith Powell, who has not come in to repair the damage on that 322 car, goes for another spin. That, I believe, was in the very same section that he went off the track earlier on. And here's Callan Tobin in the 23 car having a simple spin coming out of the final corner.
Yeah, and Tobin will find himself facing the wrong way, but getting himself back onto the tarmac, I'm sure, but just after a slight mishap. This is Mobin Khan. This is Zach Hebert, I should say, finding it with David Stevenson. I don't know really where I said Mobin Khan. Doesn't even look anything like the number 64. They're somewhat near each other on the circuit, but that Echelon Sensible car in the purple and black is absolutely Zach Hebert. We've seen him be really consistent in his performances over the last season and a half or so, and we've seen him be able to just find himself in championship battles or towards the front end of championship battles, even without getting those headline wins, P2s, but just by getting P3s, 4s, 5s and 6s, he's found himself right towards the sharp end of championships, particularly at the back end of last year. Let's see if he can replicate some of that magic once again. Only 10 minutes gone in this race, so more than enough time to try and pick up a few positions, but he'll be hard-pressed to try and catch the leader. Fast as that once again from Adam Brockway, and that 42 looks pretty quick now that he's got the clear track in front of him.
I like how you raised the fact, as we see a big off-track excursion from Koido in the number 72 car. He's going to go off the circuit yet again, this time heading through turn number 1. I think we saw him run wide and end up in the paint earlier on, and he ends up in the gravel trap this time by going to rejoin the racetrack, bring a bit more gravel out onto the racetrack, which if we were running into the dry would be a little bit terrifying, but I feel like these drivers have a bit more difficulties than just some gravel strung across a racetrack. There is the off-track moment from Koida, just carrying a lot of speed off into turn number 1. Now, turn 1 around here, it's a little bit hard to psych out as is based off the way that corner is going uphill. It feels like it's open, then tines, then opens up again, then tines back again. It's a very odd corner here, turn number 1 at Mugello, but double that with some rain, and it makes an already tough corner even more challenging.
every single corner at this circuit, I think it's fair to say, is one that brings you a lot of challenge in the dry, let alone in the wet. Of course, turn 1, 180 degrees of rotation to the right. 2 and 3, a chicane to kick off the lap. 4 and 5, another chicane where we saw the contact between Mobin Khan and Adam Brockway. Then you get to 6 and 7, diving down the hill, where we've seen some of the more extraordinary shots when Formula 1 were in town, from what the Mercedes car could do around that part of the circuit. And then you get to the Uribiates, 8 and 9, rising back up the hill with a double right-hander. Another chicane at 10 and 11, try and keep it on the road there before the 180-degree rotation at turn 12. A little flick through 13 and 14 where Aaron Myers came a cropper before the final corner. Turn 15, more than 180 degrees worth of rotation, and definitely a tricky one to keep it on the road. Diving down the hill before rising towards the start-finish line once again. Joseph Maley in the 999s, not having the best of evenings so far, and at 13 and 14, he's found the barrier.
Yeah, when you raise that we are only about 13 minutes into this race, this probably felt like the longest 13 minutes of some of these drivers' lives, as we've seen a decent amount of them have multiple off-track excursions. Ayrton Williams, though, in the number 25 car, I believe that may have been his first in the Aston Martin, dropping down the running order. As we go back to the live action and see some stuff going on in the LMP3 category, we'll note the fact that Mobin Khan has put on a rousing recovery drive, has made his way up into 5th, and may start challenging JP Alfonso for 4th. This is going to be real tense stuff heading down into the chicane. Let's hope they can make it through clean, unlike what Mobin Khan and Brockway did earlier on, nearly coming to blows, as Khan having to take evasive action and back out of it.
You're not going to be able to make it work there, as Mobin Khan. Going to have to find someone else to overtake the 996, but this is the gorgeous pit of racing tarmac between 6, 7, and then 8 and 9. Such flowing, gorgeous corners as you rise down the hill. There's contact. Khan into the back of Alfonso. They're both off to the road, and Mobin Khan will be off the road for a second time in the last 5-6 minutes. And this time, JP Alfonso has joined him in the gravel. The likes of David Stevenson and Victor Couto into the top 6, and Zach Hebert into the top 4. As I said before, consistency and being able to keep it on the road is what's seen him towards the top end of championships, and we're going to see him get a podium out of that tonight.
You know how I said that my prediction about Mobin Khan taking the checkered flag in this race was going to age like milk? Yeah, I mean, we still got a lot of this race left to go. 45 minutes to be a bit more precise, so plenty of time for Mobin Khan to make his way back up the running order, but 2 high-key incidents involved in side-by-side fighting. That it does not bode well in terms of him making his way from 9th, where he stands at the moment, up into the lead, considering the fact that Brockway has increased that gap between himself and Maxime Brennan now to 6.5 seconds. So Brockway setting the fastest lap of the race as well, just completely checking out.
Yeah, I think Brockway really doing an incredible job to keep himself right there. And we see Zach Hebert now coming to the pit. And interesting to see the 5-1-1, and I wonder if that's damage or just an early pit stop for him, to get it done and not have to worry about it for the rest of the day. We'll keep an eye on that one as we work our way through, looking at some of the GT4s. There is Zach Hebert. Well, there he is. You can just about see him now. You saw a pretty hard concrete wall, but Zach Hebert getting stopped in his box, and we'll get going once again. That didn't feel like a proper stop there for Hebert. Interesting. We'll keep an eye on it. Victor Couto in the 72 is still inside the top 6. Possibly that he's just topping up on fuel there, Ron, just to get himself enough to the end, because of course you won't be using as much fuel as you normally would in these wet conditions.
Yeah, that's a very good point to raise there, Dara, talking about the pit strategy, which is oh so vital in these races, and has certainly proved itself to be very vital in the 2 races we've had thus far this season. That's a good point to raise, though, in terms of the fact that these drivers can stretch that fuel a lot longer in the wet conditions than they usually would be able to do in the dries. I mean, probably helps the fact that they're lifting into the corners, taking it oh so easy, and racing around this track as gingerly as they possibly can. Walking on eggshells, I think, would probably be the best way to describe the way these drivers are tackling this race. So that fuel discussion going to be really key. And another thing that's being spiced up by the weather, the fact these drivers will be able to stretch a tank of gas a lot more, even upwards of probably about 15 minutes longer than they would in terms of regular racing conditions. They will still have to pit, though, and that is a real game changer in this race. If you do it well, you're going to be golden. If you do it badly, you are going to be kicking yourself when everything is said and done.
Still a long time before everything is said and done, though. 43 minutes or so, just a touch under, before we will see the checkered flag and a lot more sliding, a lot more tentative throttle application to come. Eric Fenson fending from Ken Copeland for P4 and P5. These guys not a million miles away from Justin Rame. I also think it's worth to point out the fact that Aiden Young has got the lead, and we haven't really touched on him too much because he's been comfortable in the lead, but he's only got about 2.5 seconds ahead of Cade Smith, who is really holding his own in that 41, not allowing Aiden Young to get too far off the leash. Of course, Aiden Young, 20 race wins inside of the GT4s alone. So really impressive to see if he can increase on that number. Justin Rame, of course, has the most GT4 wins in the PRL of 23. That's Jeff Rosenberger going off the road. 23 wins for Justin Rame, 20 at the moment for Aiden Young. Aiden Young's catching, and if he makes it another win tonight, it'll be 21 with another 6 races this season. If you catch my drift, Rob, we may be seeing a change in the guard.
Yeah, and that would be a real big storyline to follow all throughout the rest of the season. Certainly can't rule that out, though. A big amount of talent in this series. Just looking through the 2 classes that we have got talented racers all throughout this field, and in terms of the championship fights as well, got a lot of drivers that we're probably going to be talking about. I mean, it feels a little bit... I'm trying to think of the best way to describe it. It feels a little bit early to make a judgment about this, considering that, I mean, hey, we only have 2 races on the board. But after this, we'll officially be through the first third of this season, and we haven't really seen a driver prove themselves as a head and shoulders championship contenders. We see Robert Schwenkler in the 235 wrong stuff car pointing the wrong way after a spin through the chicane. Thankfully gets it stopped and has it now rolling in the right direction. But nevertheless, going back to the point that I was going to mention, we may see that in the 2 classes that we have, we may start to see some drivers prove themselves as those championship contenders. At this point, I'm looking at Adam Brockway and Aiden Young, who would be able to grab their 2nd wins this season if they can hold on to this spot that they're running in at the moment between now and the end of this race, coming up in about 41 minutes time. But still, haven't really seen a driver rise to acclaim and be that one where, like, yeah, they are the championship favorite by far. So some real intriguing storylines to keep tabs on all throughout the season.
Yeah, it really is a fantastic championship. I do have to say, I know I will be slightly biased. I personally love Monday Night Action in the PRL. I really think we get some of the best racing, and we're seeing that again towards turn number 1. Victor Couto, David Stevenson, the race winner from 7 days ago, trying to get himself back inside the top 4, inside on at turn 1, trying to go for a closing gap. He's not going to be able to find a way through there, and they've got to be careful because they've got Mobin Khan right behind. Khan has been off the road twice in the opening 20 minutes, and then he's a heartbeat away from the top 4 as they work their way through 2 and 3. You can see Victor Couto all over the rear end trying to find the right line, and Khan almost jumping in front of him around the outside. They'll negotiate their way past some GT4 traffic, but this is a great little tussle towards the front end of the field. The only issue for these guys is they've got 15 seconds to catch till they get to the podium.
Yeah, they've got a big gap to try and close, but again, they do have the benefit of time in their back pocket. 39.5 minutes left on the clock, so these racers certainly not out of tricks to try and close up that gap. They will have to pull some rabbits out of their respective hats, though, to be able to close in that gap. But hey, I've seen stranger things in my time covering iRacing events. Stevenson, Coito, and Khan, though, involved in this 3-car fight. May have the side-by-side fight between Khan and Coito heading off into turn number 10 and 11. Still side by side. Mobin Khan has come back now twice, and you can see some traffic being involved. Khan going to back out of it. I think he ended up in the paint heading through turn number 10 and 11. So rightfully backing out of it. Side by side, though, involving Stevenson and Coito. Coito going to run wide, though, and that's going to allow Khan to slip his way up into 5th.
Yeah, Mobin Khan trying to recover for what will be the 2nd time in this race. Can't afford to have to try and recover for a 3rd, and will know that he has to keep it on the road here as he would be pressured by Victor Couto down in towards the final corner of the lap. David Stevenson just up in front in that 777, trying to keep it on the road, and he does easily. It's always a little bit nervy to see drivers drift out a little bit wide towards that Italian painted tarmac, or into concrete, I should say, at the final corner, but he's just about made it work for him. Up in the GT4 class, though, Justin Rame and Cade Smith, they've swapped positions. Justin Rame gaining up into the top 2. Cade Smith, I was just praising him a couple of minutes ago. The keeping Aiden Young very much on a tight leash, but he's lost 10 seconds somewhere, and it's meant that A, Cade Smith has lost the lead, lost P2 I should say, but B, Aiden Young suddenly has a 12.5 second lead.
Aiden Young just checking out as it stands currently. That is a massive gap to pull, and I will say as well as we see that spin for Cade Smith in the number 41 Mercedes. That's heading off into one of the chicanes at the very start of this lap. Not the first time we've seen an incident heading into there. Certainly won't be the last either, but Aiden Young checking out in that 427 car. He will still have to manage this race, though. You don't want to get too comfortable, especially at this early stage, as look at that, Khan and Stevenson side by side. Oh, and they come to blows.
Mobin Khan again going off the road, well, off the racing line at least. This time contact with David Stevenson. It allows the likes of Jerome Bertillon to get inside the top 5 and Victor Couto to try and run away a touch. Mobin Khan still, somehow, I will never know how, 3 times he's been off now, still inside the top 6 in this race. Couto, though, with a little bit of breathing room. Jerome Bertillon will be loving his life inside the top 5. Been a difficult season so far for the 217, but if he's able to keep it clean from here, he may be able to get himself yet another top 5. We'll have to check how many he's had in the past, but I'd like to say it's a few. Yes, 90 top 5s in his PRL career from a driver you'd expect to be around for quite a while. Jerome Bertillon, one of the people who really makes things tick here at the PRL, and he's ticking quite nicely tonight. P5 for the time being.
And he is ticking very well in that 217 car, so we'll have to see if Jerome will be able to hold on to a top 5 spot, or if Mobin Khan, who has been unkillable thus far in this race. I mean, we're not even at the halfway mark. He's been involved in, at this point, it's been 3 incidents gone off the track on all of those occasions, and yet it's still held on. But Victor Couto making the call to come into the pits with 36 minutes left to go in this race. A black flag being served.
Yeah, black flag for Victor Couto. He's clearly reaching incident limits and passing them. So Victor Couto now out of the race. Mobin Khan still in the race, back up to P4. He's 45 seconds off the lead after less than half the race. He's inside the top 4 with over a dozen cars in this race in the class. So incredible to see. Mobin Khan still up in the top 4, showing how much pace he really has despite the incidents that we have seen so far. Bertillon, though, still on track for what would be a 91st top 5 in the PRL. Mind you, that lists him 9th in the all-time list. Only 6 drivers have over 100 top 5s in the PRL. Jerome Bertillon, one of 3 more over 90. So we'll have to see if he can make it 91, but he's going in the right direction for that for the time being. And Zach Hebert, I don't believe, going in the right direction, spinning around after contact at turn 13.
And that section, the turn 13 and 14 chicane, can you even call it a chicane? It's terrifying regardless of what it is. One of the fastest sections of this racetrack. Coming off at turn number 12 as well. You just barely have enough time to set yourself up heading into that section. And to do that in the rain, you kind of expect some incidents. Doubly so some side-by-side racing heading into there, as we saw a couple of moments ago. Brockway, though, doubling down, as I think he just improved on his best lap of the race to improve on the fastest lap of the race as well. Brockway, just an entirely different zip code today.
Yeah, it really is impressive to see what Brockway can be doing so far, and same for Aiden Young. I saw somebody in the chat actually ask, are there any, what's up with any rookies or dark horses? Well, I don't think we have many dark horses towards the front of the field in this race. I think Maxime Guenon you could count as a dark horse in the 27, as we see Andrew Slovak now having a black flag in the number 33. This could be a running theme. We're not even halfway through the race. Aiden Young, 20 race wins in the GT4s. Justin Rome, 23 race wins in the GT4s. Everybody else in the history of GT4s in the PRL has about, this is going to be a rough estimate here, looking at it now, about 95. So 43 for Justin Rome and Aiden Young alone, and 95 for everybody else. That includes most of the races where neither of them were even here. So just to show how impressive those two have been, they have won alone pretty much a quarter of all GT4 races in the PRL, stretching back years that this league has been running. So definitely a big tussle between those two. Brockway's had a few wins in the LMP3s. Notably, he's had a grand total of 4. That puts him 4th on the all-time list, looking for win number 5. But for Maxime Grenon, no wins for him for the time being. So definitely, I think, some of the more well-known figures in their classes here this evening. But that's not to say we won't get a surprise.
I certainly won't rule that out at all. There's a very high chance, considering it is still raining quite heavily around Mugello, that lightning could strike, so we'll just have to wait and see how things shake out between now and the checkered flag. We'll say, though, you mentioned a point a couple of moments ago, and I'll circle back to it, talking about the fact that a lot of drivers have been given black flags thus far in this race. So those who are new to the PRL series, it should be noted that in session, you get an incident point penalty after 15x, and then you start getting more of them after every 5. So if you look at a driver like Mobin Khan, for instance, has had 3 off-track encounters involving vehicle contact. Let's say he got really bad luck in all of those and picked up a 4x on each and every single one of them. He would find himself, doing the quick math in my head, don't fail me now, public school education, he'd be at 12x already in this race. So he's going to have to walk around throughout now in the checkered flag as if he's on paper thin glass, because if he picks up a drive-through penalty or some sort of penalty at all, that's going to be a real detriment to Mobin Khan. Hasn't had a smooth race. He's currently 50.7 seconds back of the leader of Adam Brockway, when I really thought those two were going to be battling for the win, and they were battling for the lead earlier on, but just fate really giving Khan the short end of the stick here. The fact he's still running in 4th, though, despite all the craziness that's befallen him, I am genuinely shocked, because it's like the story on Top Gear of the indestructible Toyota Hilux. Mobin Khan cannot be killed here at Mugello.
Can't. We'll have to see if it can stay that way right towards the end of the race, but for the time being, he is staying alive. Great to see some of the drivers getting their cams involved. Jerome Bertioum and JP Alfonso getting their cameras to us, and we thank them for that. Always great to see some of the drivers, and I noticed that I think Bertioum had a guitar or something behind him. I'd to see him give a strum on that if he was able to get onto the podium, but that's for later. We've still got 31 minutes left in this race to see if anything can change. Kate Smith looking to try and recover that P2, which he will feel is his after he made the mistake to spin around and lose out to Justin Rame. These two now 15 seconds off the lead. Justin Rame, that's Dakota Brown. The rear end starting to slide on him as Kate Smith will take advantage inside line at turn 12. And, well, I think he's popped himself up into P2, excuse the pun, judging by the livery. But Justin Rame dropping down to P3, got another fight in his hands to get himself into the top 2.
That was a fizzy move. See, I'll join you there in the puns, Darryl. But look at that, nearly ending off, coming at turn number 14. That was a very terrible pun. I apologize. Hit the paint, and I thought he was going to loop it, but still holding on to P2 for now. A nice recovery after we saw him have an off-track excursion heading off through the first chicane. And speaking of an off-track excursion, that's a wild one from the number 97 car of Rodriguez. Looks like he's going to rejoin the race without any further incident, but still mowing the grass. That's still a terrifying ride. It looks like they're going slow, and they are, but iRacing, even with their reworked off-track physics that they've had for quite a few seasons now, any sort of off-track excursion in the rain through the grass is still going to be sketchy. As you can see, Carter James nearly getting involved in it with a GT4.
Yeah, I think a couple of drivers going so far wide, they're nearly finding some villas off the circuit. I mean, new parts of the circuit being found by some of these drivers, just making sure that they keep it out of the walls, quite frankly, which are not a million miles away from the drivers, but close enough that they are always a risk, notably between the likes here of turns 2 and turn 3, and on the exit of turn 2 as well. Walls not a million miles away.
But you look at that track, it's not bone dry either. You don't look at that and think, yeah, it's perfectly dry. I can hold a picnic around there. No, it is still actively raining. The track is still actively soaked, and the track conditions still not ideal in terms of the temperature either. As you can see, a spin coming out of the corner. That, I believe, is Robert Schwankler going wildly off the track. Thankfully for him, no more oncoming cars, because he speared across the track going the other direction.
Yeah, and Schwankler just about managing to not make that worse than it had to be, quite frankly. 27 minutes left of this race, left to run. And drivers sporadically positioned around this circuit. Manella is finding his way inside the top 10, of course. Just in behind him, he's got Kurt Ham, but not too far ahead of him is Gabriel Gutierrez. Nice little gaggle of cars right from Arnaud Jeunesse in P6 all the way down really to Garrett Maines in P12. There isn't a great deal to separate this train of cars. All of 5 seconds to split the 6 cars, which is not the norm after 34 minutes. We've seen most of the drivers split up and have big gaps form between them. But a train still existing in the mid-pack in the GT4 is always good to see, albeit these guys over half a minute off of the race lead. Jeunesse trying to keep himself inside the top 6, of course, comes into this race P3 in the championship. Definitely got some ambitions to keep himself there. His issue is the likes of Aiden Young, Justin Rame, right up towards the sharp end of the field. Aiden Young, of course, dropping down to P4. We'll have to see if it all shakes out in his favour. 26 minutes to go. Kate Smith leads, Adam Brockway leads. We'd have a decent enough victory lane, I think, if that was to stay as it is, but I can't guarantee that here on.
Yeah, in a race like this, even though it's looking pretty good for Brockway, you don't want to pull off a commentator's jinx. I mean, I did that pretty badly with Momin Khan thus far. Khan's still running in fourth. I wouldn't rule out Momin Khan breaking his way up into the podium spots as well, so I have to worry about those pit stops between now and the checkered flag coming up in about 25 minutes time, as we nearly see two of the LMP3 runners coming to blows heading off through turn number 8. A couple of moments to go. Brockway dealing with some traffic still. Getting back to the point that I was going to mention, I don't know about you, Dara, but it would not shock me at all if Momin Khan could fight his way up into the podium, as we see a big off-track moment in GT4.
Yeah, and that is not the right line to be taking through turns 13 and 14. You can just about see that you're not going to get too much further off the road there for Jeremy Manella, as there's pretty much a cliff on the outside line there, but the 881 just trying to slide its way back to the front, which he, back to the track, which he just about does. Aiden Young managed to get himself back up into P2 as well, overtaking Justin Braggon. Contact between Jacob Van Spanje and Zach Hebert, I believe that is, as they run their way towards turn 1, and the 511 just about makes it through and up into P7. But that was a difficult looking moment. Contact is not what you want to be seeing down into turn 1 with the differing lines and with the weather on the circuit.
Yeah, that is absolute sketchiness if ever you see it in a race like this. That is terminal velocity for these race cars. Heading down into turn number 1 around Mugello, these drivers are faster than they ever will be, and look at that. That, if they hit a little bit harder, we would have seen 2 cars go off in a cloud of dust, steam, and smoke. So thankfully, they're still out there on the racetrack and pushing hard. These racers trying to give us some battles to talk about all throughout this grid. One battle, though, that we may end up seeing develop is actually at the front of LMP3. I was just going to note the fact that Maxime Grenon now holds the fastest lap of the race honors over Adam Brockway. So this may be wishful thinking possibly, but the driver of the number 27 car not allowing Brockway to completely run away with it. That gap now 9.8 and teetering around that 9.5 to 10 second barrier, but it's still not game set match for Brockway. If we may see a fight with Grenon and Brockway, I wonder how Brockway's going to handle that. He hasn't had too much of a side-by-side fight to worry about ever since the drop of the green flag, so it would be nice and really intriguing to see how he deals with a battle, especially if it's one forming right towards the checkered flag.
We've still got a little ways to go before that, as Matthew Wyckoff and Arnaud Jeunesse battle over 6th and 7th for the time being. Matthew Wyckoff last season teammate to Aaron Myers, as they found themselves P2 and 3 in the championship come the end of the season. We'll see if Matthew Wyckoff can repeat that kind of success. Not doing so for the time being so far this season. If anything, it's Arnaud Jeunesse who's kind of taken over that mantle. We'll have to see if he can stay there. Jeff Rosenberg sliding off the road in the number, not 71, in the 82, hitting hard into the barrier. And that rear right isn't going to have thanked him whatsoever for that bite of metal. Driver off the road in the LMP3s, wide at the final corner. Another GT4 going wide at the final corner as well. Difficult down there to really judge exactly how to find yourself in the corner, but we do have pitters now, and that's the 3-1-2 Arnaud Jeunesse, P3 in the championship, P11 in the race for the time being, but he's coming down to the box for his one and only, should be only pit stop in this race.
And as we see Janess trundling his way down pit lane, I want to bring up a point that I'm shocked we haven't mentioned thus far in this broadcast era, talking about the pit stops and how important they are, and talking about the sketchiness of the pit entry and exit around here. That pit entry, don't want to make a mistake through there, because you certainly don't want to pick up any sort of pit lane speeding penalty, but the exit, I feel like in conditions like this, is possibly the most terrifying spot to be found in at all. You're going to have competitors picking your car out in the spray, not even picking your car, picking your rain lights out in the spray as they're coming up to you, going probably about at the very least 50 miles an hour quicker, probably more so close to 100 miles an hour quicker. So that is going to be really, really sketchy, and doubly so considering the pit lane, you know, no one's really running on it. It's not the racetrack, so it's not actively drying, so probably a lot of standing water through there, as well as, look at that, a beautiful attempted move from Eric Fenton. It's not going to work in the 77 car, but around the outside through turn number 8, if he made that stick, that would have been golden.
Yeah, Matthew Wyckoff just about holding on for the time being in P6, and he will continue onwards. We see more drivers fly their way through. Christian Menezes, in the 55 car, getting wide off the road, and he'll be feeling all of the pain from that, just about getting it back on the circuit without too much of an issue. Victor Couto as well, turn number 1. What's happened to last week's race winner? He's going to slide off the road, just slide. Nothing that he can do, and he will rejoin the circuit just a few seconds down where he otherwise could have been. Still waiting for pit stops from some of the leading drivers in the final 20.5 minutes of this race. I think there's another driver going off, in the background at 13 and 14. It's getting ever more slippery here, Ron, and it's just not getting easier for the drivers.
And that right there was Kurt Ham in the number 11 McLaren going off the track in very quick fashion, heading through turns 13 and 14. Haven't seen many drivers get caught out by that corner thus far in this race. It's mainly been the likes of turn 1 and the first chicane that's caught out the vast majority of the drivers. But every single time we've seen a driver go off through this section, it has not been a good moment. There we see Ham going off and bang into the barrier. That was a huge hit for that number 11 McLaren, taking a lot of brunt with that outside tire barrier. So getting back to the point I was going to mention, haven't seen too many drivers go off the track in that section, but every single time we have, it has not been a good ride.
No, not for quite a few of these drivers, but I mean, some of these gaps are just so impressive to see. I mean, Brockway having a full minute to Mo Khan in P4 shows how consistent he has been throughout the last half an hour in this race. Maxime Grenon, though, keeping him somewhat honest. 8.5 seconds is that gap as they were on their way through. The gap between Kate Smith and Aiden Young is decreasing all the time, even though I believe Kate Smith is yet to make his way down pit lane, as we see David Stevenson go around in the 777. Again, turn 14, 13 and 14, that chicane to end the lap is really tricky for the drivers. We've seen everybody go, well, people go off in all parts. And again, a GT4 going off on the outside of the corner, just showing that you can pretty much get it wrong in every which way. We've seen that so far tonight.
Yeah, that I believe may have been in quick succession with the off-track moment we saw from Kurt Ham. So I think that may have been the 2-for-1 deal, heading off through 13 and 14 a couple of moments ago, as Garrett Maines has a big spin in the number 12 McLaren. Maines kicked the season off with a pretty good win at the Glen, but not going to grab another win here at Mugello. Going off the circuit, heading through the first chicane. And here's another moment from Joseph Malley in the 999 car. There's not been a good drive from him at all, and a spin and into the concrete barrier. That's a big hit as well on the front end of that McLaren. Gotta say, those McLarens absorbing the impacts rather well, and may have seen a bad rejoin there a couple of moments ago, but these McLarens, I don't know what it is. They must be made out of tungsten or something, because they've had some pretty major whacks, and it looks like they barely pick up a paint chip.
You look at Manella in the 881. He's not had the easiest of evenings at all. None of these guys have had easy evenings by any stretch of the imagination. But Manella, one of the drivers more than most, who is struggling out there at the moment. Ayrton Williams in the number 25. Aston Martin, he's up inside the top 4 in class. Not a name we've really mentioned much because he's kept himself out of trouble. He kept himself away from too much of the battling. He's just behind the battle though with Justin Bracken, what would be a podium finish, and you're not going to miss that number 71 on the circuit. The vibrant green and yellow sticks out like a sore thumb in these grey and damp conditions, and it is good to see that there will be, surely, incoming, a battle for the podium here on.
Yeah, that is very much so in the cards with these two racers being as close as they are. About a second separating the two of them, heading their way off through turn number 6 and 7. As we've talked about throughout this broadcast, one of the fastest parts of this circuit, but also one of the most demanding as well. You're trying to build up some speed and carry the momentum, and doing all of that in the rain with some rivers running across a racetrack is oh so tough of an ask, as we may see a driver go off the track. This is Jeff Rosenberger. We saw him go off the circuit earlier on. I don't think there's a rear wing on that race car. Looking through, there is not a rear wing on that race car. Maybe some more damage, possibly. No, it looks like he just decided to call it quits. No, he stopped on the side of the track after an off-track moment, as we see Mobin Khan down pit lane. So looks like a rather interesting moment there from Jeff Rosenberger. Just ran wide and decided to stop to get out of harm's way. So no major harm done to his competitors, the only harm being done to his lap time, as we see some of the first drivers running in the top 6 to come into the pits in the LMP3s.
Yeah, LMP3 pit stops, if they've not occurred, are likely to be happening in the closing minutes now, as we see Zach Hebert not in the pit lane, mind you, on the circuit and running his way up through turns 2 and turns 3. Mobin Khan, though, just in behind, only a second between them. In the battle for what would be a podium position, sorry, not for podium position, excuse me, P4 in this race. Not quite a podium position, 38 seconds off a podium position, mind you, as Mobin Khan has just tried to recover from his struggles in this race so far. Hebert's been consistent, but not as consistently quick as Mobin Khan, despite his incidents, and I think you'd have to favour the 64 in this kind of battle.
Mobin Khan, he has been unkillable thus far in this race. I gotta wonder, though, I'm curious as to whether or not the incidents we saw earlier on involving Mobin Khan have maybe knocked his confidence a little bit, because he had 3 rather different looking incidents, all of which he got a piece of, as we see a big wild off-track moment from the number 13 car of Joe Ferrioni. That is no harm, no foul. And here's another moment. This is Parker Muirhead in the number 19. Lots of GT4s going off the track, mainly through the braking zone, locking up the rears or just locking them up altogether and getting way loose, heading into some of these corners. GT4s seeming like they're handling about as well as a trash bag full of lasagna thrown down a flight of stairs.
It's an analogy I don't think I've ever heard before, if I'm honest. I don't know if I'll ever hear it again. But it is tricky, isn't it, to keep it on the road at this stage of the race with only a quarter of an hour left to run. Hebert will continue to run in P4 for the time being, but Mobin Khan is not far away and ready to pounce regardless. You'd have to say that there's definitely a risk that Adam Brockway could even lap these two with the pace that he's showing. The fact that he's gained 100 seconds in 45 minutes, you'd have to say he's likely to get another 20 in the final 15, by right. Zach Hebert definitely a risk. Mobin Khan may be able to get away a touch with the pace that he has shown, but with Jerome Bertiome on the lead lap, Jacob Van Spania and only JP Alfonso, only the top 8 are on the lead lap at the moment, from 13 drivers to start off with, and only one driver who's majorly down, and that's Victor Couto. It's really impressive to see Adam Brockway's pace in this race. Not quite a similar story in the GT4s. Aiden Young has lapped quite a few drivers, but not quite the amount that we've seen in the LMP3s, and he's got more of a battle on his hands. 10 seconds back to Justin Bragg, and Ayrton Williams will be at 19 seconds back to Cade Smith in what should be the battle for the lead in the GT4 class. But still, 13.5 minutes to go. Zach Hebert still ahead of Mobin Khan. How long is that going to last, though, here?
Oh, that is a very good question, yes, Dara, and I have a feeling it's maybe not going to last as long as we may have thought. I'm going to look through to try and see what sort of lap times these two are setting. They seem rather evenly matched, but one small mistake and a trip up from Zach Hebert can decide this race. It can also be decided by some lap traffic encounters. They got some more GT4s to deal with, heading their way off through turn number 10 and 11 right now. That's not going to be very good for Hebert. It's not going to be good for Khan either, so looks like they're going to stay where they are for now. However, it's one of these racers, you can't pin it down until these drivers cross that start-finish line to take the checkered flag, because who knows, heading through the final corner, you can see one of them go off the track and completely change up the way this race has been. Bowman Khan's been very scrappy, and look at that sideways. That's going to cost him. Hebert losing it coming out of the chicane. Very lucky to keep it out of the barrier. I was fully expecting that 511 car to end up buried in the tire barriers around this track. Be careful, though. Oh, that was near disaster. But Hebert, I think he should buy a lottery ticket, because that was oh so close to an absolute catastrophe.
Yeah, turn 14, catching out more than a fair few drivers, and Hebert not exempt from that, dropping behind Jerome Berthiaume, who could still be in with a chance. That 91st top 5 in the PRL. It'd be his 158th top 10 all time in what is his 246th start. 20th in terms of all-time race starts, but 9th in terms of all-time top 5, showing how good that Jerome Berthiaume has been down the years in pretty much any machinery that he has thrown himself into. Zach Hebert's going to try and stop that, though, and has 12 minutes to do so. Can't afford too many mistakes like we saw just a moment ago. Brockway and Grenon, though, into the pit lane for their first and final pit stops in this race. They only have an 11.5-minute stint to come, and you'd have to say they're the two battling for the lead, and Brockway's going to have more than a fair advantage into the final 5 or so laps.
Yeah, that's a good point to race. We are quickly approaching that checkered flag. This race has absolutely flown by. Well, and as for us in the commentary booth, for some of these drivers who have had really scrappy days, it probably has felt less so like 49 minutes done in this race, more so like 49 years. But still, now 11 minutes left to go, a couple of laps left, and looking through to see how the front two and LMP3 did in the pits. The advantage yet again going to Adam Brockway. So not only is he quick on the racetrack, he's quick off the racetrack as well, spending a full second less stopped in the box compared to Grenon.
And that gap extending to pretty much that 20 seconds, going to be almost impossible, you'd have to say, for Maxime Grenon to close that down. Would need pretty much 4 seconds a lap if he has designs on winning this race. Car off at turn number 12. There's a GT4. Again, finding new parts of the circuit we didn't know were possible off the road. Zach Hebert ahead of Jerome Berthiaume once again. I wonder if there's a mistake from the 217, whether Hebert was just able to find his way back through. But Jerome Berthiaume, that 91st top 5, may be on hold as we work our way through the final sector with them. Joseph Maley it is in the 999. Third time in the final sector that we've seen him go off. Not all, of course, at the same time in the final sector, but I think he went off at turn number 11 he did. He went off at turn 12 there, and also off at turn 14. So not been the cleanest of ends to the laps for him so far tonight.
Yeah, that it has not, but hey, I mean, oh, and you could see the crash heading through. That's Aaron Williams in the number 25 making contact. You got the LMP3 involved in that, and that was nearly Maxime Grenon getting caught up in that action as well. Just saw that in the corner of my eye there. That was a matter of feet, which may not seem like too much in the dry, but in the wet, you hit one puddle, and that could have been a 3-car accident instead of a 2-car.
Yeah, luckily enough, though, we were just seeing 2 cars involved. I say lucky enough. We didn't want to see any collision at all, of course, but lucky that we didn't get more drivers involved, as we, I think I saw Matthew Wyckoff improve into the top 6 now in this race. This is the view from Dakiel Rodriguez. That gap, closing. Bit of a lockup as well, not helping either. But he goes around. Matthew Wyckoff is fighting with Ken Copeland, mind you, for P6 and P7. As Ken Copeland, mind you, gets back into P6 in that number 15 car. Just to prove that point. Etton Williams and Eric Fenton not a million miles away up the road as well. So P4 on the cars if Ken Copeland can get a bit of a move on, and they are in the foreground of shot. I think we're also, though, seeing Matthew Wyckoff dive into the pit lane. So if that move wasn't done on track, it was about to be done in the pit lane regardless. And Matthew Wyckoff will come down pit road with only 8.5 minutes on the clock.
Yeah, and I'm curious when we're going to see some more of the drivers running up towards the front come in, because they gotta come in at some points. But Roy speaks volumes about how much the wet weather conditions can change these drivers' strategies. In a dry race, we will have seen the entire field come in. Still have a few holdouts, though. We've got Aaron Williams in the number 25 car. He's yet to come into the pits. Joseph Malley's come in 3 times. Just saw that. He's running down in 23rd. Probably part of the reason why he's running down in 23rd is off the fact he's come into the pits 3 times. Justin Bragan, though, running in the number 71 car, second at the moment in the GT4 class. He's yet to come into the pits, but he will have to at some point. That'll give P2 to Justin Rem, but it'll still be 24.5 seconds between himself and Young for the lead in GT4.
Yeah, and Eric Fenson should by rights promote himself up into the top 4 when the pit stops are completed. Ken Copeland on for what could be a podium here in the GT4 class. Great to see Ken back to the podium if that is going to be the case. Of course, fantastic driver through the years, again in a lot of machinery, and I'm sure he'd be delighted to find himself inside the top 3. I'm actually trying to find out how many top 5s Ken Copeland's had in his PRL career. It's quite a few, that's for sure.
Certainly a lot. Copeland, a driver who I have experience with in a rather odd fashion, used to do the race control for a series that he was a part of a couple of seasons ago. And I can assure you that he is a fast and clean racer. Very rarely, if ever, did he have to have a conversation with us in race control. So staying out of the principal's office and just putting on some good drives all throughout every single race that he is a part of could be part of the reason why he finds himself in 4th. I don't think he'll be able to make up any more spots unless we see some sort of off-track excursion for the likes of Aiden Young and Rem. Certainly going to make up one as Bragan now coming down pit lane in the number 71 car. That mandatory pit stop in that Mercedes going to allow Copeland to slip up into the podium spot. So well done, Ken.
Yeah, we'll see if he can hold himself there towards the end of the race. 5 PRL wins all time for Ken Copeland. Unlikely to pick up a 6th with himself 35 seconds off the lead, but a podium position would be fantastic for his championship aspirations. Coming into this race, P6 in the championship, definitely within range, only 24 points back. He'll gain ahead of the likes of Etnerans, Chris Schmerecker, and likely, well, maybe not Arnaud Jeunesse, but definitely closing in on Jeunesse. For what would be a top 3 in the championship. Only 5 3/4 minutes left of this race to run, and only a handful of laps left to go as well. Adam Brockway will cross the line, and at the pace he's currently going, which is around the 2-minute 3, he'll cross the line and very much comfortably. Easy on the mouth here for us, Ron. 3 laps to go for the number 42 leading the race.
And let's see if he's going to try and make it even more. He has certainly shown the pace whereby he could probably add some more laps onto the total, but the time is ticking down. And for Adam Brockway, I wouldn't say it's a Sunday cruise. It'd be a Monday cruise more than anything else. But cruise, not in the sense of driving around in a leisurely style. Cruise in the sense of he's floating around in the ocean, because this track is still monstrously wet. I believe the rain has come back with a vengeance. It has still been raining all throughout this race. iRacing currently marking it as moderately wet, and iRacing also running the numbers and working out that the relative humidity with this absolutely soaked racetrack is presently 100 degrees. Gee, the standing water certainly gave that away. But still, Brockway just absolutely dominant in this race. As much as Mubin Khan got struck by many falling anvils throughout, and that could be part of the reason why he may end up finishing outside the podiums unless he has some major turn of pace between now and the checkered flag. Mubin Khan probably wouldn't have ended up winning this race either. Adam Brockway just in an entirely different dimension pace-wise here at Mugello.
Yeah, and you can see the 2 leaders on the insets doing an incredible job in their respective categories. Aiden Young heading for what would be his 21st race win in the PRL, 21st race win in the GT4s, moving him that 1 step closer to Justin Rame, who has the lead in terms of all-time GT4 wins in the PRL at 23, as he looks to try and maybe even surpass that this season before we get to the final round in the first week of March. Ken Copeland has lost out P3 to Eric Fenson as the Australian driver has made his way up inside the top 3, and Eric Fenson wouldn't mind another podium with the Fenson brothers really being an impressive collection of guys in GT4s, GT3s as well. Eric trying to put himself back into the podium spots as well. Ken Copeland may have to wait a little bit longer, and he may drop behind Kate Smith. Indeed he will, as the Texan will find his way into the top 4. Going wrong for Ken Copeland in that wrong stuff car.
And as Copeland loses out on that spot, it looked like, quite mockingly, the back of the number 41 car of Cade Smith, that rear wing, was waving at him heading down the start-finish straight on. I'm not sure if you saw that side-by-side racing, though. Heading off into the second chicane, Copeland trying to fight back, but he's going to end up in the paint, run wide, and that attempted overtake is not going to work out at all. We'll say Eric Fenton, a little bit farther up the road, ran off the track as well. So that's going to maybe exhaust the final challenge that Ken Copeland had to make his way up into fourth yet again, but still got a couple of laps left, so it's not game, set, match just yet. You can hear the ambient noises of these cars driving around the racetrack and the tentativeness of these racers hitting the throttle. They don't want to spin up those rear tires, otherwise they're going to find themselves in a world of trouble. You can also hear the stones as well ticking around these race cars and hitting into the wheel wells and the floors quite a lot. It sounds like you're driving a car off-road, the amount of off-track excursions we've had, bringing some grass and gravel onto the racetrack. Certainly probably the reason why it does sound that way, but I'm not sure if you noticed that, Dara. The waving rear wing of Cade Smith as we see the spin from Copeland that sent him back there in the first place.
Yeah, Copeland coming around there. Grenon also having his own issues. He's now over a minute down. I worry that he's got some damage on that car because he's dropping time hand over fist. Maybe it's just his off. We've just seen him go a minute behind Adam Brockway. I just had a fun couple of stats for you here, Ron. Quick little quiz as we get towards the end of this race. I'm not expecting you to know the answer, mind you, but it's a fun one all the same. All-time GT4 PRL top 10 finishes. Number 1 is Justin Rain with 44. Number 3 is Aiden Young with 31. Can you guess who number 2 is?
Ooh, number 2. That is a really good question. Can I... Ooh, I'm trying to think now. Would it be Ken Copeland? Are we leading into that while we're still following him? Or
no.
Am I being played like a fiddle here?
It is, funnily enough, Adam Brockway, who leads the LMP3 class here this evening. So GT4 royalty at the top of both classes. In fact, Adam Brockway is third in poles. He is a little bit further down in wins, but he's third in top 5 finishes as well. Has 2 wins in the GT4s, but still 26 top 5 finishes. All the same in comparison. This is likely to be Aiden Young's 21st win and his 30th top 5 finish, to really give you a bit of the antipathy between the two drivers. But it's great to see that Adam Brockway has been great in a GT4. He's doing great in the LMP3. And he has 68 seconds, 69 seconds, nearly 70 on the rest of the field. An incredible display from the 42 tonight.
Oh, as you can see, a big off-track moment from Eric Leroy. I was just going to mention the nice gap for Adam Brockway at the north end of the field, but Brockway running number 4 in the 444 car, having a major off-track moment. That was heading off into the turn number 10 at 11 chicane. Not sure if there's some sort of contact, but either way, that's allowed Momin Khan to slip his way up into the podium spot. So Momin Khan, the unkillable number 64, has been no good, very bad race for him, but Leroy having this spin, heading off into the corner, going to allow Khan to slip his way up into third.
Yeah, and Khan's done a great job as he will find himself in the podium positions once again. But as we're now on the final lap, and that was not quite the the track map there. And the Brockway comes down into the final sector of the lap. He has just been an absolute force to be reckoned with tonight. Comes into this race as a championship leader, and the 42 is showing exactly why that is. There was a little bit of contact early on with Momin Khan as the 42 and the 64 came to blows at turn 4. Since then, he hasn't looked back, and the rear view mirrors has been filled with either lapped GT3s or by GT4s that he passes with ease at this stage of the race. Just the one more corner to go, one more GT4 to negotiate his way past, and Adam Brockway will find himself to victory lane once again. His team, Morad Nasem Squad, Oceana Coffee, having a great season as well, thanks to him in part. But this is going to be a stellar 6th, his 6th LMP3 win in PRL history. Adam Brockway, championship leader. He extends that championship lead, and with over 72 seconds of an advantage, you'd have to say it's well deserved. What a win from the number 42, and it's Adam Brockway, your winner tonight in the LMP3 GT4 challenge for the LMP3s. In the GT4s though, Ron, it's a familiar story, and it looks like it's going to be the same story as it was from 7 days ago, with Aiden Young with a big advantage.
Yeah, that's a huge gap to have. 26 now, coming up to 27 seconds between himself and Justin Rem. 2 PRL GT4 royalty running at the north end of that class. But Aiden Young certainly proving himself as the man to beat in the early stages of this season. He didn't win the opening race at Watkins Glen, but he won the second one at Daytona, and he's going to round off the first third of this season in style. He's going to be heading his way off into the final corner in a couple of moments' time. He doesn't have to push it. He doesn't have to worry about a whole lot. He just needs to get it around this corner, make sure he doesn't spin or crash, and then the checkered flag is going to be as Aiden Young, though, in a rather dominant drive, going to go onto that start-finish straightaway, weaving around and flashing the lights to take the checkered flag here at Mugello to win his second race this season in GT4. Meanwhile, Ken Copeland and Cade Smith going to have another swap-a-roo in spots coming to the checkered flag, with Ken Copeland making his way up to fourth for now.
And with Mobin Khan and Graxine Grenon still racing, Khan has overtaken Grenon, and somehow, with everything that's happened, by being 80 seconds down on the rest of the field, I believe Khan is still racing. We'll double check that one in a minute, but for the time being, provisionally, it seems that Adam Brockway is the winner. Maxime Grenon is P2 ahead of Mobin Khan, but again, that may change. Eric Leroy, Zach Hebert, and Jerome Bertiome, 4th, 5th, and 6th. They were all on the lead lap, along with JP Alfonso, who finished in 7th, just about on the lead lap, nearly a full 2 minutes down on the leader, but P7 all the same. Jacob Van Spania, David Stevenson, and Dakiel Rodriguez rounding out our top 10, with Carter James just the lap down. Chris Matson was 2 laps down, with Victor Couto, race winner 7 days ago. Sandy for him, 10 laps down, and well out of contention. Over in the GT4 category, it was in the end Aiden Young who took home the win, 30 seconds ahead of Justin Rame. Those two now have a combined 44 race wins in the GT4s alone. Incredible to see that, with Aiden Young closing the gap to just 2 in that list of all-time wins. Eric Fenson rounded out the top 3 in his McLaren, not too far ahead though, with Cade Smith and Ken Copeland in what was a great battle for P3 towards the end of the race. Justin Bragg and Ayrton Williams, Matthew Wyckoff, Kalen Tobin and Gabriel Gutierrez rounding out our top 10, all a lap down officially, but may have been on the lead lap depending on where they crossed the checkered flag. Arnaud Jeunesse' run of top 5s comes to an end with a P11. Roman Foe finishes in 12th, and Kurt Ham for the Hungry Hamsters only gets himself into P13. Andrew Slovak had a black flag halfway through that race, managed to recover to P14. Keith Powell and Garrett Maines were also a lap down in P15 and 16. Stephen Tang and Jeremy Manella 2 laps down in 17th and 18th, with Joe Faroni in 19th and Parker Muirhead rounding out our top 20. Just the final 5 to go. Christian Menzes, Jeff Rosenberger, Joseph Maley, Robert Schwenkler and Aaron Myers, all a long way down. For Aaron Myers, I'm sure gutted to be out of the race, and we'll have to pick up a whole host of points on the run for the final few spots. But what we do know in the LMP3s is we still going to double check on who finished P2. We do know for a fact that it was Adam Brockway who won the race. We'll give him just a minute before he jumps into the booth. But Ron, it's always good to be able to speak to race winners after the race, and he's just jumped in, so I'll be able to drag him in now. Adam, welcome in, Adam. I know you've just jumped in. I've dragged you in immediately. Congratulations on the win. 80 seconds of a victory margin. That is just an incredible result for you.
Yeah, you know, getting the points for tonight was mega because, you know, it's a tough track. It's one of the only races we have with rain, and, you know, to capitalize on this race and not have to use it as my drop week is definitely going to be a big play for the championship.
Yeah, we mentioned that actually at the start of the race, that some of the big hitters in the championship may end up having to use their drop round if they come to blows, but none of that happened to you. 80 seconds in the lead. Almost a shame that you couldn't get points, extra points, by finishing that far in front, if we're being honest with ourselves. But talk us through how the conditions felt from the cockpit, because it looked like you dealt with them with ease. But sure, it was a little bit more difficult than that.
Yeah, it was definitely the torrential downpour. It's definitely the wettest session I've been in all week, so the driving lines a little bit more difficult. So, you know, lap times were probably off by, you know, 3 to 4 seconds. But keeping the car safe and not making any mistakes, not getting off tracks, not going off the track, hitting the wall, not making contact with GT4s, you know, as long as you could do that, you were going to have a good position tonight.
and the good position you had, extending that championship lead as we head towards our next rounds in the calendar. Of course, in 7 days' time, we'll be finding ourselves going to the circuit, to Barcelona, Catalonia. Different surroundings, different feel to the circuit as well. Is it one you're looking forward to?
I actually don't have much track time there, so got to put a lot of work in this week. You know, I know Mobin's going to be fast as usual. You know, Vigo should be back next week, and he's always quick. So definitely going to have to put some work in to keep up with these guys.
Yeah, well, you're going to have the advantage going into it in terms of the championship. But we wish you all the best, Adam. Hopefully we'll get to speak to you in 7 days' time. But we hope you enjoy the race next week, and we'll speak to you then.
Thanks, guys. Have a good night.
Adam Rockway there, race winner in the LMP3's P2 man in the end, confirmed to me, I believe, by our producer Ramiro, is Mobin Khan. We'll drag him in, and Ron, he's with you now.
Yeah, Mobin Khan now joining us in the commentary booth. Now, Mobin, I have one simple question considering how the race went for you. How in the world did you end up in P2 when everything was said and done?
I think the iRacing gods are really happy with me for something, because that was the craziest race I've ever done in my life. So yeah, that was insane. I mean, it was a good start. We were able to take the lead right away, and good pressure from Adam. We had a little incident, little racing incident there, and he got on my right rear fender and spun me around, and then I think it was just kind of a gaggle all over the place. It's hard to predict where you're going to understeer, and the slightest bit of contact with how little grip is out there really just exaggerates any contact or effect. So it was eventful. We tried our best to pit at the right time to close the gap to P3, and kind of a miracle with P3, P2. I was just able to catch him in the closing stages.
You're able to close him up, and some mistakes from some of the drivers around you coming to the checkered flag certainly helping you out as well. But hey, a P2 is still a P2, and certainly hoping for maybe a bit more of a calm day in the office come time for the 4th race of the season at Barcelona in 1 week's time. So what are your thoughts heading into that race?
Yeah, that'll be a brand new track for me, but I'm quite good at high downforce tracks. I look forward to racing at Barcelona. It's a lot of fun. Seen some F1 races there. And I look forward to it. No rain is going to be a huge plus. So starting tomorrow, we get to work for Barcelona, and we'll see you on Monday.
I will say as well, in terms of not having any rain to talk about for Barcelona in 1 week's time, I think you drivers are certainly welcoming that, and our producer Ramiro certainly welcoming that as well. May God have mercy on that man's computer's graphics card. But Mobin Khan, thank you very much for joining us in the commentary booth, and well done on the P2 result. Excited to see you back out on the track for the rest of the season, man. Thank you for joining us.
I appreciate it. I'd just like to give a shout out to Satellite Racing and Adam Crane for supporting me through the LMP3 program, as well as my teammates Christian Menezes and Ayrton Williams, who are also participating in PRL and GT4. I'd like to give a shout out to Dr. Dabber, Ellis Engineering, Moradness, Nemesis Lab, as well as PRL and RaceSpot for giving sim racers a fantastic platform to showcase their talent.
Awesome. Always have to have those thanks and shout outs at the end of the interview. Mobin Khan, spoken like a true professional. Thank you for joining us in the commentary booth, and well done on the 2nd place.
Thank you.
Mobin Khan then, gracious as always in the P2. I'm sure he's pleased by that. But now we can drag in the P3 man from the LMP3's Maxime Grenell. Not to be for you tonight, Maxime, but a podium all the same. You must be pleased.
Yeah, of course. I'm always happy with a podium. A little bit of a tough little ending there, but we take what we get.
Again, I mean, a good qualifying result. That must really give you some confidence in that regard going into the next few races.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I have a really amazing team who's been really focusing on the LMP3. I want to give a big shout out to Tom Bland, Dario Fortini, Duncan Watts. All 3 of them, we've been working really hard on getting like a perfect setup every single week of the Falcon series, and obviously that translates to the PRL series. So I really appreciate the car that they've been delivering and how much progress we've made. So it's really thanks to them and all the practice we've done this week that we somehow got pole today.
The top 3, I mean, you haven't really got many points so far this season, not starting the opening 2 rounds. Do you think that you can kind of put the cat amongst the pigeons in terms of a championship battle, if that is to develop towards the end of the season?
I probably can't go for a championship battle, but I can definitely put up some points on the board, especially if we keep the strong pace we had today. Just need a little bit more consistency. I had to finish the race on 3 wheels there, but you win some, you lose some. But I don't think I can bring the championship battle, but definitely can get at some points there. I just had to miss the first 2 rounds because I was overseas, so it happens.
Yeah, exactly. These things happen. But Maxime, congratulations on the podium. We hope to speak to you again next week, but I'm sure you'll relish in this P3, and we might speak to you in 7 days' time.
Thank you, guys. Have a good one.
Great to speak to Maxime Renon as always, as he finished in P3 tonight, and now we can have a quick chat with our podium citizen, the GT4s. It feels like it's a rinse and repeat, Ron, but our race winner, Aiden Young, is with you now.
And with me for the second week in a row, Aiden, I apologize that you have to deal with my voice again, but well done on taking the second win in a row. You won at Daytona 1 week ago. You win it in the rain here at Mugello. Talk us through it. That looked like a wet and wild one.
Well, what can I say? I love a rainy night. I totally didn't just quote the Eddie Rabbit song. I was a fast rabbit, but I enjoy the rain, so that was fun. The last few laps, though, were a bit sketch. The rain kind of went from light, and then it stopped, and it was like, oh, hello there. Did someone ask for heavy rain? So I was like, oh, I don't need this. It's not going to be good for me, but I just backed the pace off a little bit and then just tried to focus on getting the car to the end, because on those used wets, once the rain starts coming down again, and then with low fuel, it's not a very good combo.
Yeah, that does not seem like a fun combo at all from our perspective in the commentary booth. I can't really speak for Dara, but I can speak for myself when I say that I was mildly terrified looking at you racers tackling that racetrack for the past hour in soaking wet weather conditions. So thankfully, hearing that we won't have to deal with the weather for Barcelona in 1 week's time for the next race of this season. So hoping for a return to normalcy in a way, and for you probably hoping for another trip to Victory Lane. So what are your thoughts heading into that race in 1 week's time?
Give me some more rain. I want it. No, for real though, I hope I could have good pace at Barcelona in the dry. Last time we went there, the Mercs seemed to have pretty good pace there, so hopefully I can maybe use my set that I used last time a couple seasons ago there as a baseline, and then work on that and see if I can't get myself on the quick times for the quick time board.
Awesome, man. Well, I'm sure you're going to be feeling good about your chances come time for the next race of the season at Barcelona in 1 week's time. And if it makes you feel any better, back in my karting days, I remember preferring the rain myself. So you're not alone in that regard of absolutely loving the rain, and iRacing doing a wonderful job at bringing it to the service. But Aiden, well done on bringing that car to the checkered flag and bringing it into Victory Lane for the second race in a row. Well done, and excited to see you back out on the racetrack for the rest of the season. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Yep, see you next week.
As always, for the race winner in the GT4s, and we can now speak to the all-time record race winner in the GT4s, peachy tonight though for Justin Rain. Welcome in, Justin. Not to be for it in terms of the win tonight, but again, good points, consistent results. It's going to keep you in that championship picture, isn't it?
1 second, I don't think I can hear you guys.
If Justin can you hear us now, Justin? Okay, we may give Justin just an extra minute to get himself heard. Can you hear us now, Justin?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Perfect, good stuff. I was just saying that it wasn't quite to be for you in terms of the win tonight. Aiden Young closing that gap in terms of the all-time GT4 wins, but P2 consistent results going to keep you in the championship.
Yeah, Aiden was on another level for the racing in the rain today. I need more practice in the rain, that's for sure. Didn't quite like the setup I was on, but I also don't really know how to set the cars up in the rain. Still kind of learning. Yeah, it was a little hectic, a little sketchy. I was just trying to stay alive and not crash into the walls.
Again, showing some of your class to keep it up into P2, recovering a couple of positions at the start of the race as well. You'll be right back in towards some form of championship contention. Do you have any kind of confidence going to the likes of Barcelona next week?
I like Barcelona. It's a fun track. I usually do pretty good there, but we'll have to see how the race goes.
Yeah, and we hope that you do well, of course, to try and keep yourself in that battle between yourself and Aiden in terms of that top of the wins all time in the PRL for GT4s. It's always great to see you two right at the front of the field. But Justin, thanks for being here this evening. Thanks again for joining us in the commentary booth, and we may be able to speak to you again in 7 days' time.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys.
Rain there, gracious as always in his P2, and finally we're on P3 man in the GT4s. It's Eric Fenson, and he joins you now.
Yeah, Eric Fenson now joining us in the commentary booth. And now, Eric, I believe this is your first podium finish from this season, so well done on taking it here at Mugello. Certainly wasn't easy for your drivers, though, so podium result here, certainly feeling like a result well earned after a hard day in the office.
Yeah, that was one of the tougher races. McLaren, not that great in the wet, as I'll find out. But yeah, I spun like twice. I don't think I deserved that, but yeah, I don't know. Everyone else did as well.
Yeah, just from our perspective in the commentary booth, we saw many drivers going off the track. I don't know what it is. There must have been like some sort of Easter egg hunt with drivers going off the track trying to find where they were hidden in the tire barriers, but you kept it clean and were able to make it to the checkered flag. So really good result. I want to ask you about some of the challenges that you drivers faced all throughout this race, and what was maybe the most challenging corner of them all around this track?
All of them. The first 2 chicanes were pretty tough, trying to get it rotated. Other than that, yeah, just stay out of puddles. The last 13, 14 was kind of scary. But yeah, other than that, just wet.
Yeah, just wet period, and rather terrifying for you drivers, but thankfully you make it to the checkered flag, end up in a podium result, and that's a really good day. Really good result, well earned in conditions like that. Thankfully, won't have to deal with the weather come time for the next race of the season at Barcelona in 1 week's time. So what are your thoughts heading into that race?
Do the same thing. Get some more practice in, and I should do alright. I've done a fair few laps around Barcelona, so got some experience.
There we go. Experience certainly going to help you out, and maybe give you another shot to get back-to-back podiums. We'll have to wait and see how that goes for you in 1 week's time. But Eric, thank you very much for joining us in the commentary booth, and well done on the podium.
Thanks, guys.
We go then, Eric Fenson, who will round out our podium sitters so far, or for this evening's race. Great to speak to all of them, and we won't have long to get going until we get going again. We're on 7 days' time, Barcelona, very different surroundings, and a little bit drier as well.
Yeah, a little bit drier, which I think is going to be news to the ears of many of these racers. Barcelona, thankfully, we are running on the historic layout, so we won't have to deal with that absolutely abhorrent final chicane, which has thankfully gone the way of the dodo bird in real life as well. Running on the good layout of Barcelona, these drivers are going to have a whole lot of fun, some good overtaking opportunities as well. Barcelona, it's a classic. Everyone's driven on at some point in their sim racing / racing game journey. Certainly, I've driven many laps around this back when I used to drive in the old F1 games on the Xbox 360 as a kid. But Barcelona, it's a fantastic track. I'm sure it's going to host another fantastic race from the still rather young season.
Yeah, looking forward to it. 7 days' time then before we get going at the Circuit de Barcelona, Catalunya. Same place, same time here on RaceSpotTV and the PRL. My thanks to Ron Morns, who's been alongside myself, Jared Thackroff in the commentary box. We've had Ramiro, Agustin Chinieros pushing all the buttons, making the broadcast look absolutely wonderful. But after an hour's worth of intense racing action at Mugello, we will see you in 7 days' time. Barcelona is where we'll find you, and hopefully we'll get some more championship battles as well. Thanks for watching. We'll see you then.